What's going on, you guys? Theo here with the big review, back yet again with another King of Fighters Allstar video, and today we are going to be doing another beginner's guide. This one is going to be pertaining to a very important part of the game for any new player in order to grind up not only their characters, but their account to get as many free rubies as humanly possible, and that is going to be Affinity. So before we jump into it, make sure you guys smash that like button and subscribe, and let's go ahead and get into the beginner's guide to Affinity. So the first things that you are going to need to know about Affinity and Affinity Items is you're going to need to go over to any one of your characters, because all characters in the King of Fighters All-Star are going to have their own affinity. And if you take a look here, these are going to be your Affinity Items. So I've had people in the past ask me questions on the Discord, such as what are the food or what are the items that these characters have listed next to them in our character cards. And these are going to be what these items do. So basically, as you'll see here, there is going to be a mileage, and this mileage is going to give you different rewards based on how much food you feed to your characters. So starting out for level 1, you'll have the Rubies, which is going to be 10 rubies, and then next you will have an increase to a specific stat, then rubies again, so on and so forth. So basically every odd number up until you get to level 9 is going to give you rubies, which is a very important thing when you stop and consider that every single one of these characters in this game, whether they are bronze, silver, gold, or fess, are all going to have their own affinity, and therefore they are all going to give rubies. So this is really important, you guys, if you are new. I know I've had a lot of new players in my comment section with the Lament of the 7 Deadly Sins collaboration, and a lot of people have been asking me a lot of different questions, and I feel like this is one here that has come up several times, but it is also one that I think a lot of people might miss out on, just solely based on the fact that there aren't a ton of guides out there on the internet for this stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and I'm going to teach you guys everything you need to know about Affinity. I'm going to give you a few veteran tips, and then I'm basically going to let you guys decide what you want to do with your character roster. So basically, as you'll see here, with these different affinity items, you can differentiate which affinity items are going to be specifically tailored towards the character you're looking at by the pink smiley face up in the top corner. So these items here that are dimmed out are going to have that pink smiley face, and those are going to be the items that are preferred by the character in front of you. So you'll notice that when you tap on a specific item, it will show you not only the item and the slider in order to pick how many you want to feed to the character, but it's also going to show you where these items drop from. So no matter what tier or difficulty you are comfortable with or able to do or have unlocked, it will list the different reward dungeons that you can get these from, and then you will just need to choose which one you prefer and grind that one or skip ticket that one or whatever it is that you do in order to get these affinity items. So basically, once you have the affinity items, what you want to do is you want to feed the character. Now, when it comes to feeding characters different affinity items, really the rule of thumb is you want to start out with whatever affinity items they prefer first. So as you'll see here, all these different items are going to be what Benamaru prefers, and then all the ones that lack that pink face are going to be items that are going to give a significantly less amount of XP whenever you feed the character those specific items. Now, one big thing to keep in mind here is not all these items are only specific to one character. So if you take a look here and go to favorite fighters, you can see all the different characters that have affinity towards these specific foods. So this is a good way for you to be able to go in and check and see how many different characters you might have that you need to feed these items to. So if you have a stockpile of these different things, then basically what you can do is you can go in here and you can just start feeding these different characters. Now, kind of some rules of thumb that a lot of people follow, especially a lot of us veterans. Starting out, what I always try to do, anytime I get a new character, doesn't matter what tier they are, whether they're a gold character or a fest character, it doesn't matter. The first thing I do is I go in and I feed them until I unlock all the rubies. So, as we spoke about with the mileage, you will end up getting, if you take a look here, you're going to end up getting about 50 rubies, I believe it is, total. Yes, 50 rubies total for the mileage per character. So every single character that you unlock when you are a new player is going to have this mileage for these 50 rubies. So you can do the math on that, but that is a ton of free rubies and is a really good way for you to go in and unlock some extra rubies for your account. And as you'll see, most of my characters are already Affinity level 9, and that is by design. However, something that you want to keep in mind, these buffs are also very important. So typically what you'll want to do if it's a character you're planning on using in anything whatsoever, you want to at least get them to level 10. So as you'll see here, this specific Mai, she's going to increase her attack by 70 whenever she gets up to Affinity level 10. And if you go through here, all these other buffs here were unlocked over the course of that mileage. So this is part of building characters, guys. You'll want to make sure that you do this specifically for your Fest characters that you are going to be using. This is going to be one of the first things that you want to do. Now, I'm specifically leaving out the rest of the mileage here for a reason, because this is going to be a separate talking point that we're going to discuss. Now, when it comes to Affinity, as you'll see here, like I spoke of, any of these pink items, the ones with the pink smiley faces, are obviously going to give more XP than items that do not have the pink smiley face. So as you'll see there, to get around the same amount, I need to use 356 of this item that is not a preferred item for this Yuri. But then if I go here, it's going to cost me about 25. So it is an enormous difference. So make sure that you keep that in mind. Now, my recommendation isn't for you to waste a ton of your AP on grinding Affinity. However, being that Affinity drops primarily from basic story mode missions, what you can do, and this is something that we had talked about yesterday, basically if you are going to be grinding an event such as a world drop event and you're going to be using the story mode in order to do so, for instance, maybe you're grinding, say, the Opposites Attract mission that we had talked about in that video, what you can basically do is just grind up a ton of one Affinity item from that dungeon, kind of like you'll see here. And then once you've done that, you can go in and you can just feed not only the characters that are going to prefer those items, but you can also just feed those to any character you want in order to unlock more of their Affinity, because really once you've fed your items to the characters that prefer them, you're not going to have any need for them anymore, and that's basically going to be a way to get those out of your inventory. So like you'll see there, you'll notice I don't have very many of these characters left that aren't at level 9. I've pretty much gone through and grinded as many of these rubies as possible. So that's pretty much going to be that. Now, as far as what else you need to know, and we're going to start moving on away from the initial Affinity levels, and we're going to talk about the ones that are going to give you souls. So there's some things I want you guys to keep in mind about the souls, right? So basically, we've talked in the past about how souls for Fest characters are very, very important. Not only are they important for building up your characters, but they're also going to be very important for building up your purple dust stash so that you can get tokens for the unified banner. So by that, what I mean is you'll notice that starting at level 11 through 15, which is going to be where your Affinity max out at, you can get 10 souls per stage of Affinity. So basically, if you take a look here, you can get an extra 50 souls for whatever Fest character that you are working on through this method. Now, one thing that you need to keep in mind here is these souls I still recommend, and this is something that I always do anytime I get a new Fest, is I always recommend using those souls in the exchange shop, as I've talked about numerous times in the past, but I will show you guys again so that you can see what I mean. Basically, I would exchange and salvage these out in this section here and go ahead and redeem that purple dust that you're going to get for those, for these tokens for the unified banner to save rubies. People ask me and kind of get jealous over my ruby stash constantly, and this is one of the ways that I'm able to maintain it. It's through getting these tokens. So whenever you get a new character, your Affinity is a fantastic way of making sure that you can keep a stockpile of purple dust. So basically what I would suggest is once you get your Fest character to like level 10 so that you have all of your buffs, once you've done that, I would just go ahead and build them and get them maxed out, and then go ahead and unlock the rest of their Affinity, get these souls, and then salvage them out for purple dust. Now, if you're someone who needs the souls in order to build the character, if you don't have a bunch of the generic souls in the game, which I can show you guys that as well, so you know what I mean by that. But basically, when it comes to doing this, you want to make sure that you can still build the character. So if you do not have the ability to do so, if you do that, then don't do it. Just go ahead and use the souls for building the character, because it's more important that your roster is able to compete and get through more of these stages in the game, because at the end of the day, it's all about building up your characters so that you can unlock more rubies. However, try to be sparing with this and try to use as many of these character-specific souls for the tokens that you possibly can. So before we jump into the more nitty-gritty, kind of finer points of Affinity, and I give you guys some additional tips, let's go ahead and summarize what we have learned so far about Affinity. So as a new player, Affinity is going to be of the utmost importance because it helps you maintain several of the most important currencies in the game. And by that, what we mean is we've established that not only is Affinity integral to building up your character correctly and getting all of the statistical buffs that they possibly can, but it is also going to play a major role in keeping up your free-to-play ruby stash. So every character will be able to give you a maximum amount of 50 free rubies for building up their affinity, no matter what border they are, whether they're a bronze character, a silver, a gold, or a fess. The next thing we learned is how to use our affinity items and our affinity in order to help us maintain and build up a purple dust stash, so that we can therefore maintain and build up our token stash for the unified banner. So as you see, there's a domino effect that happens with affinity that is very important. Other things we've already learned, we've learned exactly where in our menus these items are, what the different item icons mean, so on and so forth. But there are things we need to expand upon, because you may have noticed that some of these affinity items have different border colors around them. So for instance, you'll see these guys here that are going to have a gold border, and then you'll have these ones here that are going to have a silver border, whereas all of your regular items are going to be gold border. So what is the difference? Why are those that way? So basically, what these are, in kind of a short summary, is these are going to be items that are going to give you quite a bit of a bigger boost of XP towards your mileage versus the normal items. So basically what you'll see here, if we use these gold ones, it's going to end up costing us, it looks like, about 14 of these gold items to go from level 9 to level 10 for this Yashiro. Now, if we were to try to translate that using these, then we're looking at quite a bit more. We're looking at well over 300 at this point in order to get to that same amount. So basically, it looks like it's actually going to be closer to right at 300, about 280. So 280 versus the teens with the other one. So quite a difference. And then if you were try to do that with these silver items are going to be, it looks like, about 57 or so. So that gives you an idea. It's quite the difference, the amount of XP it is going to give you for these items. However, these items are kind of limited. So when it comes to these, some of them will be around for kind of the entire duration. So they're going to be around forever. Other items, however, are going to be specific to certain things such as collaborations. Like, for instance, you have this wooden hawk statue that was specific to the 7 deadly sins. You have this guy here that was specific to the 7 knights, and so on and so forth. Yes, I am a hoarder. Leave me alone. So that is what you need to know about those. Now, when it comes to those, typically those are going to be favored by most any character. And it's important to note that not every character has grindable affinity. So a good example of this, and one I can show you, is I will go ahead and show you with Boss Syndrome Orochi here. So with Boss Syndrome Orochi, he does not have a favored affinity item that you can grind. So it's going to be a situation with these where, for instance, you are going to need to go in and you are going to need to use some of these other items in order to get his affinity maxed out in a proper way without having, thousands and thousands of just one specific item that you can just feed to him and grind one specific story mode for, umpteen amount of times. So some characters you're going to need to have these items for, hence the reason why I hold on to a ton of them and try not to use them very often, because if a character comes along that doesn't have a grindable affinity item, and I can show you kind of the difference because, for instance, here Omega Rugal, he does have items that you can grind. You can grind this wine here, and you can pretty much go into any of these modes in order to do that. Whereas some characters, as I showed you with the Rochi, do not have that ability. So every once in a while, those types of characters are going to come along, and you're going to want these extra affinity items, such as these gold ones or these silver ones, in order to get them built up in a quicker fashion. Now, something to know about affinity, beyond being able to grind it in the story missions, you can also get affinity if you go down here to your friendship summon. Your friendship summon is also going to give you, and have the chance to give you, all of these different affinity items. So that is one way that you can get this, and actually I can show you this here real quick just so you guys can see. So as you'll see here, we got some of these affinity items here, and then we could go ahead and parlay those into whatever character they are specific to. Now, one major thing to keep in mind that a lot of people don't really remember or realize a lot of the time when they're starting out, but if you go into the secret shop, you can actually buy the special album here, which is going to be the gold border item, which is why I have so many of these. And I buy these every single day, and I highly recommend that you do the same. This is one of the few ways that you can reliably get these gold ones every single day. So make sure that you are doing that in your secret shop amongst all the other things that you want to buy from there daily or multiple times a day. That is going to be one of the major things that you want to take a look at. So at the end of the day, guys, I hope that you now realize why Affinity is so important as a new player. Not only is it helping you to build up your character properly and fully, but it is also going to be a way for you to be able to build up your Ruby stash in a quick fashion, as well as being able to maintain other currencies that are very important, such as your purple dust and your, therefore, tokens for your unified banner, which is going to allow you to save even more rubies over the long haul. And therefore, this is a very, very important thing to keep in mind that I feel like a lot of people forget. And at the end of the day, you want to make sure that you have all this information so that you can be as practical with your account as possible, because at this point I feel like I've got pretty much all these characters built up at this point, affinity wise, to level 9 at minimum. I feel like with my Fest characters, there's certain ones that I've saved their affinities past level 10 in order to just have a stockpile of purple souls down the road if I ever really need them. Kind of a break glass in case of emergency type thing. But that's going to be today's video, guys. If you're a new player or a beginner, I hope you found it beneficial. If you did, smash that like button and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one. You all take care. Peace.